Hey, how's life? Hopefully, it's a good life. One of the things I was thinking about today and have been thinking about for quite some time now is how overreacting hinders the good life and how to recognize overreactions and maybe be able to exploit them in some cases. I'm thinking specifically about the stock market when I say that, but maybe it can apply in other ways. But I'm not in any way an expert investor, but I know the psychology of people that people overreact often. And if something happens to a company that is a temporary setback, maybe for example, and there's panic selling that goes on, it's a good time to buy, but buy in proportion because I don't want to overreact either. And that I was trying to think in my life of times when recently I have overreacted so that I can share that with you. And as you know, probably if you've seen my other videos, I haven't had a whole lot of social interactions lately, so that doesn't really come to mind. But I think it applies extensively in social situations. And I could probably dig some stuff up from the past, but I'm thinking more recently is when I had bought a stock before the earnings and I bought too much. I'm not going to say which stock it is because I don't want to try to give any financial advice or anything here, but basically it went down quite a bit and I lost a lot of money. And in hindsight, I overreacted. Now, would I have said the same thing had I made money? Maybe I wouldn't have noticed. Maybe I would have said, okay, I reacted in the right way. But we have to keep in mind that even if things work out, sometimes we're taking unnecessary risks, and that applies to social situations as well. Specifically, when you have a reaction to something, do you question yourself and think, am I overreacting? What happens for me personally when I overreact, I can always trace that back to viewing something as scarce rather than abundant. And we've talked about this before, but I believe that viewing important things in your life as abundant rather than scarce is one of the keys to a good life and one of the keys to happiness. And it's always subjective. You can view something as scarce or abundant depending on how you look at it. There's really no objective answer. Like, let's take money, for example. Is it abundant? Is it scarce? Well, it depends on your own perspective, and the things that have happened to you in your life of course affect that decision. But as an adult, particularly as a Gen X adult at our age, we have control over changing the way we think if it's based on the things that have happened to us in our past. Sometimes that's a little more difficult when there's trauma involved, stuff like that. But as we question how we're reacting to things, most of the time, people overreact when it's an important decision because there's a lot on the line, and that's when we start viewing things as scarce, or you're viewing the situation as having a lot on the line, and maybe the stakes aren't as high as you're thinking. And that's what we need to dig a little bit deeper into. And I speak a lot in big pictures. I'm trying to pull that into applying that to reality. Another way I overreacted recently was when I did a leg workout. I think I said in the last video that I had surgery on July 20th, but it was actually July 15th. I made a mistake in that, but it's been a little over 2 weeks and I'm still recovering from my bilateral inguinal hernia surgery. The doctor did clear me for workouts after 2 weeks, which was a surprise, but I kind of overdid it a little bit. I really want to get the strength back in my legs because I've lost a lot. And I started doing some hip thrusts and I went a little bit too far. And that's why I needed to kind of lay low for a while. I think I'm getting better. Like the soreness that I had, the extra soreness is the result. And it wasn't a good kind of soreness, like the soreness in the muscles I expect. And I want that because they're growing back. But the soreness around my abdominal area from doing that was resulted in an overreaction. Luckily, it wasn't anything that was too serious. But I also think about how that applies to guitar, which the stakes aren't as high, of course, but it's a good place to learn how I'm overreacting. Like, for example, if I get in front of a crowd, suddenly I want to show off and I want to add too much. Like, maybe I'll get nervous and mess up or something, or I'm not playing in proportion to, if I'm improvising, I should just relax more and not get too crazy and not feel like I have to show them everything because I might not get a chance to play in front of them again. But it's a good place to learn and apply that state of being in a state of flow to life in general, and questioning when I'm reacting to things. Am I overreacting? Am I reacting in proportion? Because we can underreact too, although I think, given my own circumstances, generally I overreact when I look at the high stakes situations. And as I said, I could probably dig up some more examples, but off the cuff, I'm not coming up with any social examples right now, and I'm kind of drawing a blank. So let me just play for a minute, because I think that's the whole reason I brought the guitar into the picture, is so that when there's a blank of silence, I can play and get my thoughts back. So let me try not to overreact and just play the way I should play. Okay, so as I was thinking about what to say while I was playing, I was thinking about how, yeah, we can underreact sometimes too. And let's think about a social situation. For example, if you hold things back, whether it's with your intimate partner or with a friend, then you're kind of underreacting to the point where you're more likely to overreact later. And it's easier said than done when there's something that you need to say, but you think maybe it's too minor to bring up. And if you consider how the person will react to the thing that you're about to say, if it doesn't feel right, I don't know. I feel like if it doesn't feel right, you don't necessarily need to say it. I mean, some people would say you need to get out of your comfort zone and confront this person in this situation because you're afraid of confrontation. But if you dig a little bit deeper and you're thinking, why am I afraid of this confrontation? Is it because I am viewing something as scarce rather than abundant? And I think we can see, oh, sorry. I forgot. I meant to turn that mic off earlier, and I apologize if there was some reverb, because the last video, that's what happened, was I kept the guitar mic on and it caused some audio problems. So hopefully that didn't happen too much. I'll go back and look at it and maybe learn to edit. I haven't done that yet, and I really don't want to. I'm overwhelmed by all the apps for editing, and I'm tired of being upsold, I guess. And when I dig into this editing software or apps, they try to sell me more stuff. Anyway, I'm digressing here. But if we underreact in situations, it can cause us to overreact later. And if we are afraid to confront somebody, it's probably because we're viewing something important as scarce rather than abundant. And that's really important to think about, is if you view a friendship as scarce, let's say a friendship, or you're with a partner and you're afraid that if you confront this person, maybe they'll leave or maybe they'll do something destructive to the relationship. And that's maybe because you don't feel that these types of relationships are abundant. And you don't believe that if that person leaves, you'll still be okay. And that's one thing you have to confront within yourself, is if you confront someone and they react in the most harsh way, obviously, if it's a situation where you feel like the person could be violent, you probably need to just get as far away from that person as possible if you're feeling that way. Or if it's something, if maybe you have some trauma and you feel like everybody could be violent, that's something that you need to examine more. But most likely, if you have that instinct, and you don't have that instinct with everybody, but you feel like if you confront this person, they could be violent, then I would suggest just getting away from that person or doing it in a situation where you're more protected. But if that's not what you fear, and you fear other things, like maybe this person could retaliate in a social way and ignore me or not talk to me, so what if that happens? There's other people that you can be friends with. There's other people you can be in a relationship with. So if you're underreacting, it might be because you view that type of love or the type of relationship that you're having as scarce. And so examine that before you react in proportion. And what is in proportion? That's really hard to say. Sometimes you can overreact and the situation works out okay. Like, I'm thinking of situations in the stock market or playing blackjack. If I won or made money and I overreacted, of course I'm going to take credit for that and say I did exactly what I was supposed to. But the point is, if I took an unnecessary risk, I took more than what I needed. And that's what happens when you overreact. Even if the situation turns out in your favor, you took more than what you needed from that situation. And why is that? It's because maybe something happened in the heat of the moment that you weren't thinking rationally, and you can't be too hard on yourself if that happens. Like, if you get into an argument with a loved one and you raise your voice, there's usually a way to mend that. I mean, unless you really fight unfairly and you're name calling and stuff like that, if you overreact, you can amend that. And maybe it was because there was a situation where you went into fight or flight, your prefrontal cortex got shut down, and you overreacted. And if you're with someone who is not understanding of that, now there's different levels of that, of course. As I said, if there's name calling involved and there are tactics that are really manipulative, which that's kind of subjective too, because it's all based on overreactions. If you suddenly call your partner a narcissist because they had a they had a bad day and I don't know, something happened. I think sometimes terms are overused. Like if you're going to call your partner borderline personality, it seems to be that men tend to overuse that term with women, saying that she's too clingy or she has a borderline personality and she's crazy, stuff like that. And then women tend to overuse the term narcissist with men because he was selfish, he was not thinking of me, he always thinks of himself. Those types of things are overreactions as well. But if someone is not fighting fairly and there's a pattern there, maybe that's a situation where you need to get out of. I don't know. But I think what I'm trying to say, I'm stammering over my words here again, and I kind of went off on too much of a tangent. But what I'm trying to say is if you examine your behavior, sometimes in hindsight, sometimes before you actually get into a situation that you view as being higher stakes, and think, what would be overreacting? How is this person going to respond? Can I handle that? And in life, it's just really important to me to think of reacting in proportion with everything I do, even as something as simple as eating. If you wait too long to eat, you're going to get so hungry that you're going to eat too much. So I need to pay attention to how much I'm eating and how much is going to bring me to a stable point rather than we don't want to get our pleasure from food. I speak universally for that. I think that is the case for everybody. If you seek to get your pleasure from food, that's not going to be healthy for you. If pleasure is a byproduct and you're using food as fuel, then great, you got a free dopamine hit, but that's not what we should chase. We should chase nutrition because in the long run, those little dopamine hits that you get from food are small in proportion to how good you're going to feel if you eat right and you don't overreact to food. So when you're thinking about food as an example, how do you not overreact? Well, don't wait until you're starving to eat. Plan your meals ahead of time. Don't have junk food around the house. How does it apply to social situations? Know that when you're in a relationship or a friendship, if that person leaves, you're still going to be okay. That's the key, is not, I trust this person. When you're with someone in a relationship or a friendship, you should trust that person. You should believe that person's not going to cheat on you. You should believe that that person has your back when things get bad or will not kick you when you're down. But you also have to realize that people are unpredictable. That's the beauty of life, is that people don't always react in ways that we expect them to react. If they did, then relationships would have zero value pretty much, because the beauty of when you truly love a person, you can't love a robot like that, because the person can make a decision that is not what you expected. And that's kind of what I guess keeps the relationship going. It makes you love another person because they're autonomous, they're different than you. But you also, steering the conversation back, you have to make sure that you're going to be okay if this person makes a decision that you don't like. And that's the key, is knowing you're always going to be okay. If that person leaves the relationship, you're still going to be okay. You've been through this before. You know, we're old enough at our age that we've had relationships that didn't work out. Did that mean that was the end of the world? No. Everything eventually went back to a normal state, and we found another person, and then that didn't work out. And then we found another person, and then that didn't work out. I say that in jest. And I don't like to use that phrase anyway. I like to use the phrase that it worked out for a time and then it ended and we moved on. At least that's how my relationships have gone. It's more like, I don't want to say it didn't work out. It did work out. We just evolved to realize that we were better off not being together. And I'm okay. And when relationships ended in your life, you ended up okay. So don't overreact when you have to confront someone or when something goes wrong. Love is abundant. And if you always know that and you pay attention to how you're reacting and you react in proportion rather than overreacting or underreacting, this is going to be very helpful in your path to living the good life. So, can you think of examples in your life where you overreacted recently, or maybe you underreacted, or you reacted in proportion and you're proud of that? Go ahead and share in the comments if you would about a time that you overreacted or underreacted or reacted in proportion and you're proud of yourself when things could have gone really wrong, but you did what you were supposed to and things turned out okay. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon.